Welcome everybody. Second Sunday forum about the call committee and our call. I'm Ann Clutterbuck, the chair of the call committee, and I want to welcome you here today and also welcome our friends that are online. These are being taped so that if you want to go back and look on the Christ the King website and see last month's or this month's again to refresh your memory about what was said, then it's very high tech, which is nice. We have 11 members of the committee and several are here today, and I'd like to ask them to stand up and introduce themselves, please.
Kathy Collins.
Nathan Weicker. Quentin Adams.
Andrea Salas. Terry Kohler, next to me.
And Terry is our ex officio, one of our ex officio members as chair of the church council. And we're joined by another ex officio member, wonderful Mandy Durr, interim senior pastor. And we also have Jill Baylor, who is currently serving in the vestry. And so she's going to join us as soon as she's finished cleaning up after the 8:30 service. We're also joined by Victoria Allen, one of our youth members, and by Emily Weinset, also a member of our youth. And it's been a really oh, and of course, and Henry Goodrow. Thank you. Henry, can't forget Henry. He wears bright orange Astro shirt, and I'm quite sure that's why we continue to win. And he shamed the rest of us for not wearing our Astro swag on Thursday when we met. We tend to meet on Thursday nights. Sometimes we meet every week. Sometimes we take off a little bit of time. We met this past Thursday, and we will meet again this Thursday. And the great news is that our ministry site profile, which we discussed at the last meeting, is active, and it's active with the synod. And people are looking at it and calling about it, and that's a very promising thing to report. There are two handouts here. One is similar to last month's, and then the other is a pastoral candidate nomination form, which I'll go over with you in just a second. But we are currently right here in the fall of 2022. We're in candidate recruitment and interview prep. We're going to be doing some mock interviews in preparation for the actual interview. And that's the stage that we're in right now. We are also actively seeking candidates, and that's where this form comes in. This form is available or will be available on our webpage, or you can email me for it by emailing the call committee email address that's also on this form, or you can find me in the directory. But we want to hear your names of suggestions for candidates. We intend to cast a very wide net and have a large, diverse pool to interview from. And this form is pretty simple, and you don't have to personally know the pastor. Don't feel like you have to know them or have sat in their church or that they know you. Even if it's just somebody you've seen online or heard might be a good fit, we want those names. So we will then take those as a committee. We pass them on to the synod, and the synod goes through their very important protocols of background checks and collegial contacting of the other synods and the other bishops to find out how candidates are. Excuse me.
I have
Yes.
a question.
Here we go. Yeah.
If we have a name that we want to submit, but we don't know if that person is even remotely interested, is the community going to call them to find out if they are interested, or how does that proceed?
So no, we do not call anybody. Our little committee does not.
Okay.
The synod does, but this form will be acted on. So if you have somebody and you don't know if they're even interested, They may be very happy wherever they are.
Right.
Please give us the form anyway, the name, and just all we really need is a name, their existing church.
Right.
And so that Tracy Brashear Schultz can contact their bishop
Okay.
and inquire.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Should we note that the request is that that you do not contact anybody yourself, right? So,
Yeah, I
so-
figured that much, but,
and the reason for that, and Tracy said, well, on Thursday, was that, hey, we want to give respect to the other synod, right? So the first contact needs to be through the synod's, the bishop's office of the other synod, and then that contact can be made if it's appropriate, right? So that is the request, that nobody contact anybody unless they're a good friend and you're just having a conversation. I understand that that's going to happen, but somebody you don't know or aren't sure, use the form and then the process kicks off.
yeah, I follow a few ELCA groups online, and sometimes you read something that a pastor has posted. This is very interesting. I may not know the pastor, but what I'm interesting, and that's what is going through my mind.
That's fabulous. And that's exactly what we want. The kind of, especially when you're reading things and you know that they've got writing skills, they're deep and thoughtful and might resonate here too. So thank you. Well, we did meet with Tracy and we'll all add in, but Kathy is our secretary of our committee. And while she's getting up here, I will toot her horn for her because she certainly won't do it herself. But she turns these minutes around with such speed and alacrity and detail that's accurate, and we're just so grateful for all of the work and the MSP, by the way. Yes.
So Kathy, come.
So one follow-up point about nominations is that when we met with Tracy, she said there's no deadline. Obviously we want nominations, sooner rather than later, but there's no deadline. So if you've got them, keep them coming. So Tracy spent the whole, 2 hours with us, and her main goal was to walk through the MSP and ask us questions so that she had a better understanding of why we said what we did and what was really important to us. And that was helpful. And she said that she has been having conversation with candidates, so it's happening, right? I mean, and she seemed pretty enthusiastic about the pool that's being developed, and she even talked a little bit about that Faith posted their MSP about the same time we did, and she doesn't see that necessarily as competition because Faith talked about a more informal style of worship than we did. So
Just a little louder, please.
I apologize. Thank you. How's that? So I was just saying that she didn't think that Faith, even though they posted their MSP at the same time, was necessarily competition because of different styles of worship. And so we talked at great length with her about the MSP. And then she also talked to us about process and next steps. And so one of the next steps, as Anne mentioned, is preparing interview questions. And we have 2 interviews, an initial interview that's on Zoom that is really getting to know the candidates and getting a sense of them. We will prepare for that with a mock interview. And so once we tell Tracy that we're ready, she will line up a rostered minister to conduct a mock interview so that we're not using our first interview with a candidate as our trial. And so, because our first interviews are on Zoom, we're going to meet next as a committee on Zoom so that we can kind of see how that works in terms of testing questions. And, I asked her, should we be looking for how well somebody meets the specs of our MSP? And she said, no, that's really her job in identifying the candidates that she is recommending as part of our pool. And so our job is really getting to know the person and through our interview questions. And so we're in the stage of writing interview questions and welcome suggestions, of questions that you have on mind. Anything else?
Maybe just one thing. One thing I saw that was a little different than what we had originally been communicated was that we thought we were going to get 4 to 6 candidates at once. And post-COVID, they say that that's not really how it happens. We're going to get 1, 2, and we're going to see those as they come in rather than waiting for a big group. So the process beyond that is still the same. Once we move on from someone, we can't go back to that person. But we won't get the, slate 1 of 4 to 6 and then the slate 2 of 4 to 6. It will be, kind of as they come in, rolling 1 to 2.
Yes.
Correct.
Which is also why getting nominations at any point, it works, that there's no deadline. Thank you.
So I have a question. So if you said if you have someone and you're just not really sure about them, you're kind of waiting, there's a better one down the road sort of, you can't do that. Or you would decide kind of a yay or nay and then move on as you interview. Since it's a rolling
I think the other thing is that we risk losing candidates if we just sit because of the demand for pastors.
Sure. We don't have to move on, but we risk losing them if we're waiting too long.
Mandy?
So 2 things. One is that the old rule was you couldn't absolutely hold someone. But that's not true anymore. But you have to tell that person that you're holding them, you're not, and you have to give them a date certain when they're released. The other thing that's true that now that never was true is that a pastor can be, and that's because of the shortage, a pastor can be entertaining more than 1 call at the same time. That's never been true until now. But that's where we're at. We have 750 vacant churches, no pastors out of 11,000. So pastors are for the first time in their lives, not me, because I'm not George, but hot properties. So, but the bottom line is that you can say, we're going to hold you for 6 months. No, you have to give them a date certain when you're done so they can consider other calls.
So they're interviewing us while we're interviewing them. Like a lot of good processes for recruitment, but God's behind the scenes, and that's what we're pretty doggone excited about. It's we've been operating with a sense of urgency, and but now we have confirmation that God is meeting that too. Now it's and keeping us buoyed in our enthusiasm. So that people are interested in us, that people are post-COVID interested in moving around. I'm gratified that some pastors are interested in staying in the ministry. A lot of you have read the articles about the crisis in call for many pastors, and this is actually, I think, really good timing that we're approaching this now at the stage post-pandemic that we are. And we have a really great product here with beautiful people and facilities, and our emphasis is going to be on the MSP, but also finding somebody that has a spiritual heart and knowledge of scripture and appreciation for Lutheran liturgy that meshes with ours. And one of the things that Tracy stressed in our first interviews should be, and these would be the first Zoom interviews that we have with each candidate, is to ask the very basic questions, like how did you first experience your call? what are your favorite scriptures? What kinds of things? How do you create a sermon? How do you, those kinds of very basic things. The first interview over Zoom is only going to be 20 to 30 minutes. And all of us who participated in Zoom meetings or any other kind of thing where interviews, et cetera, it will go by like that. So we're going to try to stay focused on the basics at the beginning.
Is the agenda or format for each first interview the same for each candidate?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to try to keep it very similar, same questions, same order of questions, same format, to try to make sure we're comparing apples to apples throughout the process. And that will be the same for our second round interviews and going forward. So yeah, good question.
And
Yes.
I tell you, I'm a little concerned about the idea of having one candidate now and maybe a couple of candidates later. In a circumstance like that, at my work, I would cancel the interview completely and repost to get a good pool of applicants. Otherwise, you cannot compare applicants. At what point are we going to say, if this is the only candidate, are we really doing our congregation a service? Shouldn't we have 4, 5, 6 candidates? I just last week canceled. I reposted the position because I only have one candidate. And I don't want to consider one person. I want to consider 6 or 7. So my positions that I'm hiring for were reposted for that reason.
Right.
And then in addition, you tell me the first interview will only be 20 minutes on Zoom. To me, it's like, okay, we have few candidates and we are just going to talk to them for 20 minutes. How do we make an informed decision? I tell you, my daughter is in the committee, but right now I'm very concerned about that. So,
Just,
Yeah.
a distinction. They won't wait to give us 4 to 6 candidates at a time, right? So they'll give us 1 to 2. We have that choice to wait for the 4 or 5 that they give us. And I think we're hopeful that we're going to get 4 to 5. She had 1 to 2 on her mind Thursday, right? So I don't think it's going to be what you described where we're
Okay.
only getting 1 to 2. It's just that, we're going to get them as they come in rather than waiting for, 4 to 6, 4 or 5 months down the road, right? Does that make sense?
So you will interview the 1 or 2 now, and you like one, you put them on hold, perhaps, because you want to interview more people. That
Yes.
is my concern.
Yes, that would be,
If you
that's our
like it-
sense of it, unless the person really knocks our socks off. And,
Okay.
and it's the right person in
In every way.
consultation with Tracy and with everyone on the committee. If it's the right person and the right time for us.
Love at first sight.
It was, yes, and then we'll pressure test it, right? We're going to do lots of due diligence on
Okay.
whichever candidate it ends up being our final candidate. But this is not going to be, we only have 1 or 2 candidates come to us and we have to, flip a coin or settle for somebody.
I was just gonna say,
Yes, please.
talking with Tracy this past, I guess it was Thursday, I think was very helpful. And I think the thing that I keeping in my mind is she and they're gonna be doing a lot of the vetting prior, right? So it was very challenging going through the MSP because, a lot of it, we did have some free form areas, right, where we could, explain a little bit better, but a lot of those were very word count limited. So it was very challenging, but we met with Tracy and she had a lot of questions and we were able to elaborate, fill in a lot of the blanks. She asked specific questions about our answers. So the other thing that I'm trying to keep in mind is, the candidates that we do get, she's spent a lot of time getting to know us, what we're looking for, asked a lot of questions, giving a lot of feedback. So that way the candidates that we do, she does bring to us have already been vetted, you know what I mean? So that's one of the other things I felt a lot better about the process after Thursday when we got to fill in a lot of those blanks and it wasn't just, some check the box and a few multiple choices. So.
Yes. Yeah, we all felt so good after Thursday's meeting. Tracy said, if I've done my job, if I've done my job right, then all of the candidates that I bring to you, that Tracy brings to us, will have the gifts that we've identified as a priority for us, and will be interested in our worship style and our MSP and our mission. So it's
When do you anticipate getting the first name or names?
we don't know, but we do plan to be prepared to interview by Thanksgiving. And that's what this segment of active work is focused on: developing our interview questions, agreeing who's going to be asking what, and then conducting our mock interviews. So we're going to be doing all that between now and Thanksgiving, and then we hope that we'll be able to receive candidates, mindful that it's Advent, right? And I think realistically, and Mandy, you can speak to this, to the timing aspect of it too. Well, we're going to be prepared to interview by Thanksgiving. We're going to be prepared to be doing this through the beginning of the new year as well.
Is there a final date when you think we want to close that stage?
No, we don't have a final date.
Would we continue all the way to next summer?
It might.
It's just slowly flipping in.
It might. Our call committee has been established for 1 year,
Okay.
and we were installed in June. So it was the sense of the council that it could be a process that lasts a year.
We keep Mandy the whole time.
It's up to him.
Yes, you can have them the whole time. And I'd just like to offer an observation about it being up to God. The fact that the committee has spoken, oh, we felt so good after meeting with Tracy. We really understood, we've got a process, we're working on how to conduct this, speaks to me that the Spirit is moving within this committee and truly guiding the process.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we've had that sense too. I will say also that this committee has been very flexible and agile. We went into it, I think a number of us went into, for example, the creation of the MSP with a certain idea on certain things. And we pivoted, for example, after hearing Daniel Zorn's descriptions and his feedback from the strategic plan. These were nuances, but they were important changes. We also pivoted when, after the interviews with staff, with the youth, with the different special interest groups, or whatever we're calling our small groups over the summer, who shared much of the same themes that resulted in the selection of our gifts.
And just on we are hopeful, right? And Tracy gave us that hope, right? That, hey, our timeline is to be ready before Thanksgiving. And she said, I can see a few candidates, being identified on that timeline as well. But we want to be completely open and transparent that may happen or it may not, right? So we are incredibly hopeful, and Tracy gave us hope as well. But we just want to, measure that hope with realism, right, of the current situation that we're in.
Jill, well, yes.
One of the changes that Tracy mentioned, that from previous call processes, pre-COVID, after COVID, change of society, et cetera, is it used to be that a congregation was given a slate, and that's what you call it, a slate of 3 to 5. You've already talked about this, I was a little late. So,
No,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
please.
We think so.
Yeah, we did, but it's,
Okay,
yeah,
it's okay.
so,
Since you covered it, I'm sorry I was late.
no, not at all.
Had to wash the dishes.
Yeah.
So y'all can have clean glasses.
And we're thankful.
Yes. She's gonna give us a tutorial on linen ironing later, but I'm serious. It may just be me attending, but,
One of the things that Tracy, and if she's talking with someone in another synod who has her role. The question she'll probably ask about people who appear in the resumes is this pastor fleeing? Or something that you as a committee and we as a congregation need to consider because of what all happened in COVID. Is this person returning to a full-time call? Some people did not leave their calls, and you'll find this very unspiritual, because they did not want to leave their health care and pay the, whatever that's, where you pay your own.
Premium.
And they didn't want to walk away from their pensions. Paid every month. So she'll know whether someone is fleeing, this can't function there. Or they're returning and they're qualified, but they just had to step out because of how disruptive and turbulent congregations were during COVID and because of our societal turbulence politically. So she'll ask those questions, and there will be some candidates that look real good that the staff of another synod would say, you do not want to consider this person.
Right.
She did say that on Thursday, is that she said that we may be well, she won't present them to us, but she may get candidates that look good on paper, but and that she thinks may even be appropriate for us, but then their synod will tell her, no, you don't want to send them there.
Or we don't want to let them go.
Yeah, and she said that too, is that she did say that there may be candidates that we would like to have and that she'd like to give us, but their synod doesn't want to let them go.
So George, the one thing I would say about this concept of fleeing is, to me, that's not always disqualifying. You know, in the current environment, congregations it may not be the congregation that the pastor went to work was called for.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's one of the things she talked about also, that there's, in pastor speak, the people have several calls throughout their lifetime. It's highly unusual for a pastor to spend 30 years in a congregation like we're used to, or 25. And that the norm is more to experience several calls over one's lifetime. And even for senior pastor. So. Well, for those that joined us, I started off right away talking about our pastor candidate nomination form, and I'd like to just touch on this for anybody who's joining on Zoom also, but we want to hear your names of candidates, and Federico had a good example of his participating in some ELCA things and reading some works of some candidates that look appealing or it piqued his interest. If you know of anybody, we want to know that, and we'll submit them on this form. You just fill out this form. It will be available on our website as soon as Rachel returns and can upload it. But or you can pick one up here or email me at the call committee website, and I will send it to you. And you don't have to physically, personally know them. You can just, how do you know this pastor? You can say, I've seen them online, and put your name down, and we'll reach out to them through the synod. But we want to cast a very wide net. We want to have a broad and diverse, deep pool of candidates, and that message has been clearly received by the synod and by Tracy. Is very familiar with us by now.
Will you be able to read any of the sermons that they have read?
Yes. Will we be able to read any of the sermons they have written? Yes. And that will be part of our due diligence also. Our work as a committee will really ramp up as we start getting candidates. We will each do our own individual deep dive on the candidates. It's the beauty of the internet these days is we can find out anything about anybody. And you can see all of their not only read their sermons on paper, but also see them on YouTube or whatever format the particular church has. We've looked at a few already just to kind of sample that. And it's been very intriguing and very fun to see how different congregations do their services even. Some of them I don't even recognize as Lutheran. And I go back, I'm like, that wasn't in the lectionary. Why do they have different readings? But, and some are very, very informal and casual. Thank you. Bye-bye. And others, anyhow, it's a very fun, actually very fun process. And I would say I didn't mean that to sound mocking, because God spoke to me in each of those experiences, but it was just different from what we personally have had. And so we will all do our due diligence and bring our observations to the table. I would say our group really works very well together. So yeah. Carrie.
I haven't read the MSP, so this might be addressed there. What will you be speaking to the candidates about as far as their housing is concerned?
Who would like to take that? Kathy.
That it's negotiable. That we'll tell them about the parsonage, that it's available, that Tracy will talk to the candidates about the parsonage. We talked about the pros and cons of the parsonage, that, it may not be, the best place for a family, but it could be a great place for temporary housing until a family decided where they wanted to live. So, and we said that clearly in the MSP that it's negotiable.
First, I'd like to thank the committee, having served on it before. We have no idea how much work really goes into this. And it's not just their meetings, it's all the thinking about it, it's the worrying about it and all. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Tracy and, Pastor Shears and Bishop Reinhardt, they know our congregation. We had Don Carlson who knew our congregation. We think we're fabulous, but let me just remind you, not everyone does. Not everyone does, but I can tell you every single candidate they sent us, and they sent us 5 or 6, everyone fit within our MSP. They all had pros and cons about which one had different elements that were better or worse and that fit within our MSP. But we were in competition then. And it was complicated. So let me just invite everybody just to relax. It may be next May, and that's okay too, except for those that are serving on the committee.
And Pastor Mandy, he did retire.
Oh, he can't leave.
Oh, no, Carol already.
Yeah, we've already.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
Rest assured, we are well known, not just in our Senate, but probably throughout the nation, for good or bad, because there are some pastors out there that they don't want a lot of servant leaders in the sense that you have a lot of leaders in this group. We participate in the leadership of the church, and there's some pastors out there that that's just not what they want, and that's okay too.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and especially on the time, it's God's time, not our time. So, any questions online? Anybody have anything in the chat? Mandy?
So I want to say something to all of you about something you need to do. I'm going to get up front because it's very important. Yeah, and it's not always a good way to say it. So by the time we're interviewing candidates, a lot of issues here that had to be dealt with will have been dealt with. Strategic plan, done. Constitution, it's in process, but it'll be done. They asked for that.
And-
building is in,
You can step back.
That
Yeah,
Mark?
perfect.
the
Thank you.
building will be in pretty good shape. Not just here, but at the other site. Both sites will have a lot of work done. I mean, you're getting a new air conditioner. And if you're not noticing it, I don't know how you can miss it. The building's being cleaned on the outside. It's amazing to me. Just about every basic thing will be done. But you have to do one more thing, and it's really important, and it's happening right now. And that's stewardship. Because I'm gonna be straightforward, because again, I have nothing to lose. It's not good. It's not good. That's just the truth of the matter. It was good in the first year of COVID. It's not good now. And just so you know, you're not alone. It's the entire evangelical Lutheran Church in America, every congregation, it's not good. Because a lot of stuff has been left, and because it's hard to tell who the members are anymore, because some of them haven't been here in 2 years for lots of good reasons and a lot of bad reasons. And we have to address all of that.
When you say it's not good, are you just saying that the commitment, the sign?
The commitment is not good,
Or
that's
the
it.
money?
Yes, I'm saying both.
Oh, okay.
So when you get a stewardship pledge card, please think about this really seriously, because that's the other thing. I mean, when I worry about that, I don't worry about much. The committee is astoundingly good. And I've worked with lots of call committees because I ended up doing part of this for the Synod in New Jersey for a while and New York, doing a little bit of Tracy's job because we got a lot of vacancies. Tracy has 18, is it 19, 19 now? You have no idea. I don't even know how that woman sleeps. Anyway, so what would make a pastor not want to come here if they see a financial crisis? We're not in a financial crisis, okay? It's not a crisis, but it does need, it needs you to do two things. Give, pledge and give, and talk to other people. You know people who haven't been in church for a while. Talk to them. Ask them why. I don't know everybody. I mean, if they haven't been in church, I don't know. So because I haven't visited every member, it's impossible because this congregation is spread out. But that's the next important thing. The next important thing, and then all the foundations are laid, and call practically anyone. The only question left then will be, is that person the right person? That's God's decision. And is that person ready to move? I'm going to say this too, ready to move to Texas. And so that distinction has to be made too. This is not the Texas that they read about in Minnesota. This place and this community. People have to hear that too. That's so. What I'm asking you to do is keep praying for the call committee. They're doing great, and it's amazing to watch them work together. And then when you get a stewardship pledge card, think about it if you can't think about it in terms of how you and God are relating to each other, think about it in terms of the next pastor of this church.
It seems to me that we have one pastor, we have a very recent other pastor who moved to Texas. Are either of you involved, or will you be involved when candidates are being interviewed?
The call committee's been very nice, and the bishop's been even nicer, and Tracy is wonderful. Yes, the answer is yes.
Seems to me
Look,
your perspective would be very, very
and for instance,
weighty for people coming from wherever.
you said about the leadership and the team kind of, so that's the number one thing on the MSP, right? Number one thing says ability to work in a team. My successor in New York, I mean, we had an incredible team in New York, and ministry was getting done by a whole bunch of people. Most of those are gone today because my successor is an autocrat. So boom, everybody's gone. Lay leaders gone. So you don't need that. So when I'm looking at candidates, you can look for liturgical geniuses and all that other stuff, social ministry gurus, the whole business. I'm looking for one thing. I personally am looking for one thing, a team player. Because I am convinced, and George, I don't know where you are on this, but I am personally convinced after 50 years of doing this, he's got more than me. That's why I'm saying it could be here, you could may have a different, that the Der Herr Pastor view is disastrous. Disastrous. Because sooner or later, somebody gets mad at Der Herr Pastor and 5 families leave. It has to be our decision. Well, back last summer, last spring, the staff said, and by the way, I'll get back to the staff. The staff said, you know, we ought to have one service in the summer just to keep the community together. So I said, this was one of those meetings. I said, okay, I'll go and ask the council. And one member of the staff, not present at the moment, said, what do you mean you're going to ask the council? I said, it's not our decision. It's their decision. They get to make that decision. And if they say we're going to have 4 services on Sunday, guess what? That's what we're going to have. So we did have one, and the council agreed. But that has to be the way it works here. And especially here where you've got, you know, as I said last time we did this, 400 editors. I mean, you have to, it's really about community. It can't be about me. And that's where I'm looking. In terms of the staff, it's worth saying this. So you do realize we have a smaller staff now than we had before. I'm going to actually write my newsletter article about staff and going forward, just because that's a question I get all the time. And that's a stewardship issue too, by the way. I look at this staff and truly, I've worked with great people all my life. I've never not been in a ministry with a staff. Parochial school, we had all these teachers and aides and cooks and everything. But the staff is unbelievable. I've never trusted so many people at the same time to do, they don't have to be directed, led, supervised. They're just good at what they do. And some of you are the product of that, by the way. And your kids certainly are the product of that. So my concern is we don't mess with them, honestly. And then we right-size the staff. So that's going to take some work. And it can't be my job to do that work. You only can go so far now. The pastor's going to have to play, the new pastor's going to have to play a role in all that. So. But again, you should be praying for the call committee because they're really, it's not that they need your prayers because they're not doing a good job. They're doing a good job and they need to know you're praying for them. You need to do something about stewardship and you should pray for the staff who are working with many of them have responsibilities they never had before. And when you get your next newsletter, understand that we have outsourced the job just to get through. Right now, we have outsourced the job of putting it together. There is someone who supervises that, but there's somebody else and make sure people like me get their articles in. I will have it on. But that's one way to handle that right now. And maybe that's not the right way to do things. That's why you're going to get a new pastor.
Just a couple of things. On the stewardship, it's not just big money because we need it, but it's, if you can increase, I don't care what you increase it by. If it's just $1 so that when a candidate says, what's the percentage of responses, that the committee can come up with a valid high number. And 55% of the family units have increased their giving because of commitments. And so there's the money piece. But there's also that time and talent, which I think they're going to be focusing on again. Fill it out, and so that they see the participation, because that is really attractive to these candidates. So fill it out. And I'm gonna push for ushers. We need more ushers.
And the 11 o'clock service, when, I mean, people, since the first time, people in New York, for instance, were looking at and saw the church full, that's huge for, and you can trust that there are pastors watching this service right now, who are saying, maybe I don't want to go there. There's 18 pews in clear view, that are empty. No, that they're not. So that's an important step too. Stewardship also includes worship. We never say that, but it's true. And the camera moves around.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mandy. We are very clear, we're very clear in our MSP and in our conversations with Tracy that we want this to be we want the new pastor's first year to be one where she or he does not have to have this as their primary focus. And Nathan, maybe you can summarize it better than I did. But
Yeah, so we originally had actually stewardship as one of the in the mutual expectation section is one of the things that we want pastors to do a lot in the first year. We actually removed that. It's not that we took it out of the MSP as a very important piece of what the future pastor, he or she, should be doing. It's just that we wanted them to feel comfortable that we have fantastic people already working with that, right? So we don't want them to have that burden and be a reason why they don't come. Because they're like, holy crap, there's a financial crisis. I'm gonna have to take care of it. No, there's a lot of work being done. We have excellent people who are going to guide them through that process. So it's not that we diminished it as an important piece of what a senior pastor has to do, but in that first year, we wanted to diminish their responsibility to really have to dive in deeply there.
thank you.
I haven't seen the MSP either. I'm concerned, are you expecting this new person to keep everything the way it is? Or are we thinking that there might be some changes?
Well, I think they're probably, the new person will bring his or her own personality and leadership style. So there will be some changes, but we focused in our MSP primarily on the strategic plan, which is a roadmap. And if you're familiar with the strategic plan, you can see a lot of the emphasis is we're sticking with what we do well, and the strategic plan has a lot of emphasis on our social ministries and programs and how to be more deliberate and purposeful around them. Those are the kinds of things that I think that you'll see maybe some subtle changes on. But we're not going to fix what's not broke, as my father would say.
Can I make a comment?
Please.
So this little card right here says our offering is being processed electronically through simplygiving.com. And this is a subtle behind the scenes change that Mandy brought to us so that when we have visitors to our congregation that see us pass the basket and the basket goes down the aisle empty, they don't get the impression that we are not a giving congregation. So we have these little cards that are available to either pick up or for the ushers to hand out. And I put mine in the basket. So I'm putting something in the basket every Sunday because we give online. This is something that a new pastor, these little subtle shifts and changes are beneficial to us. And a new pastor can bring those kinds of things in also.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, there were some, on the flip side of it, there were, especially in our conversation on Thursday, some things that we wanted to make sure that we kept.
Yes.
I think we had a lot.
Amplify that.
The main thing, one of the things we talked about a lot was musical, and not necessarily maybe ability, but willingness. And, so that was one of the things that we had a pretty long conversation of the time of how important that was to us. So I think anytime you get a new pastor, there is going to be change, right? But we did have some conversations about some of the things that we wanted to make sure stayed the same.
And specifically chanting. And apparently chanting is a skill that's taught in seminary, or used to be. Maybe it's not taught anymore, but it is a learned skill. And but not everybody does it. And we feel that's really a critical thing, a gift for our next pastor to bring, is the ability to chant, or willingness to learn before day one. And that was also a fun process to go through that.
Tracy's eyes got really big when he said,
Yes.
that is a deal breaker.
Yeah, they did.
If they can't chant, maybe not.
I think she asked why we didn't put that in the comments period, portion at the end of the, we had a word limit. We had other things, so, but it's good to, that was fun for me to learn that how it's taught and how she learned how to chant. Speaking on tone, I believe is what she said. So how hard can it be, right? I'm being facetious, so. But no, it's a very important thing. So anything else that I've missed that from the call committee that you all would like to share in this forum? Kathy?
We mentioned this last time, but we are actively recruiting. So there will be an ad in the Christian Century. So if you read that and see an ad, don't be surprised. And we can entertain nominations from people of churches that are in full communion. And so Tracy talked about posting the MSP on the Episcopal website. So we're not just sitting, waiting, but a combination of seeking nominations and advertising for people.
Who do they, I haven't seen it yet. Well, who do you, does it say contact?
The Senate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tracy was okay with that.
Way to just continue to cast a broad net. Even if there are no actual responses from the people who read it, hopefully they'll pass it on to somebody. People come to Houston for all kinds of reasons, right? They come to return to family. They come for our outstanding medical center. If they have a loved one here.
Barbecue.
They come for our barbecue. They come for all kinds of reasons. It's a fabulous place, and this is going to be just the right spot for the right person. So. Any questions online? Anything? Okay. Then we are going to be heading out after this. Some of us are to the West Campus to share the same message. We're conducting these Sunday forums every third Sunday of the month, except for during Advent and during Lent. So next Thursday will be our November, third Sunday in November will be our last one for the calendar year. And I look forward to, you all can contact us anytime. We don't need a Sunday forum to do that. So Mandy, would you like to close us out with a quick, what you do? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a quick prayer. For all that has been, thanks. For all that will be, yes. Amen.
And just to note, next week, there's no Zoom for this. It's a session that's going to be with Beth Marie Halverson, Pastor Beth. Here in person only, and people have been asking about how do we have difficult conversations. So that's hard to do on Zoom. So it needs to be in person. So you are welcome, folks at home. Sorry, there will be other opportunities though to learn how to better communicate with one another. So
Come to church, bring your play card.
thanks, all. It's good to see everyone.
Thank you.